Thank you, and welcome to another episode of EVA Media's World of Business Aviation podcast. We're back again here with another special guest. It's great to have you with us if you're rejoining. It's equally great if this is your first time. Either way, please let us know what you think. I'm Paul Eden, editor of EVA magazine, and with me today I have Will Samuelson. Now, it's worth saying that the nature of Will's work is that his phone may ring and he may have to leave the room, in which case this could be the shortest podcast in history, but fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Thank you for joining us, Will.
Hello, Paul. It's nice to see you, and thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
No problem at all. Now, you are a helicopter pilot, and given this is an aviation podcast, that's not entirely unusual. But in your case, what does helicopter pilot mean?
Helicopter pilot, in one word, means to me it means adventure. I think when I was learning to be an instructor 20 years ago, my instructor who was teaching me used to tell us the most fantastic stories, and I couldn't believe the things he had done. And I said to him, how is it you can go off and do these things? And he said, it's all through the helicopter. He said, if you choose a career as a helicopter pilot, you will meet amazing people, you'll see amazing things, and you'll go amazing places. And 20 years on, I can tell you that's exactly how it's been.
So within your adventure, and thinking about your adventure now, I know that you are, or at least I think I know that you are an instructor or an examiner.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Today I mainly instruct and examine commercial pilots only.
Right. Okay. But also, and this is the part that everyone listening and watching is going to love, is you do lots of helicopter movie work, both with the camera and as, if you like, the star of the show, I think.
Yes, that's right. I've been very lucky. I've had a brilliant movie career, actually. I've loved every minute, and I think I've totaled about 80 feature films now. I've done hundreds of TV shows and sporting events, but certainly flying a camera has been an absolute joy and has been full of excitement throughout. It's been a real privilege to be a film pilot.
So I have to say, my son is a film fan. When he found out I was speaking to you, he said it's the only cool thing I've ever done in my life, and he was thrilled that you have your own page on IMDb. He was like, "Oh my God, he's on there! That's amazing." So okay, let's thinking about that movie TV work. I know there are lots of things that you can't tell us, but also things that you probably can. And I know the first thing everyone wants to ask is, tell us some of the movies. What are some of the blockbusters you've worked on?
Oh, gosh. Well, I've been really lucky to work on several James Bond movies, and several Mission Impossible movies, which I think, as far as action movies go, they don't get better than that. They are really sensational projects to be involved with. I've worked on several Harry Potter movies. Which have been absolutely brilliant. Involved an awful lot of flying in Scotland, which was tremendous. And lots of movies in between. Most recently, the Meg 2, which we spent a month in Thailand. Actually, 2 years ago, I say most recently, the film industry has actually been quite quiet, as we know, because of the actors and writers' strikes. But Meg 2 was absolutely tremendous fun. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it's a hugely popular franchise, and we had an enormous amount of fun working on it. It was really good.
Am I right to think that you flew the action helicopter in Meg 2?
That's true. Yes, I flew the action aircraft, and we had a Chinese actor called Wu Jing, who was absolutely brilliant. One of the main stars of the show. He did a lot of his own stunts, and yeah, we had a lot of fun throwing a helicopter around and making it look like a proper action helicopter.
And I think too that the the Gotham police helicopter in the Batman, that's also
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that was super cool. I mean, only a very quick shot in the movie. As somebody once said to me, if you drop your chocolates, you're going to miss the shot. But yeah, we filmed it. Gotham City was in Liverpool, and we had a great sequence where we were just hovering above the city hall where the action was going on beneath us, and the my colleague Miles was flying the film helicopter, and I was flying a police helicopter with a searchlight, and we were just sitting there. But it was all part of the fun of the film. So that's a lovely box to tick, Batman. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay. So normally though, you have the camera fixed on the helicopter, and I'm seeing here in my head this kind of giant ball contraption with a camera lens sitting in the front of it, fixed onto the skid or the nose, and then I'm guessing someone in the back who operates it and tells you what they need you to do
That's
next.
right. Yep, yep. There's several, depending on the size of the camera that you're flying, depends how it's fitted to the helicopter.
Mm,
The commonality is the helicopter you use. I for film flying, I only fly the single squirrel and the twin squirrel, as they are the two aircraft that have the mounts which are designed to fit specifically on the airframe. If we're flying a TV show, a sporting event, we tend to fly with a pole mounted camera. This will be a pole that is bolted to the underneath of the airframe, and then the camera is then bolted or connected to the pole.
mm,
If we're flying a movie camera, something like the IMAX, for example, we need a much bigger frame to hold that camera and a much bigger stabilization system. And that's another frame which is bolted to the helicopter, but the camera generally sits within a gyro stabilized gimbal,
mm,
and you know, and that's a heavy camera. So and those are the sort of two ways to connect the camera system. The camera operator sits in the back mostly. Sometimes an operator will sit in the front,
mm.
and he is solely responsible for everything that the camera does. My job is to keep him safe and just put the helicopter where it needs to be for him to achieve the shot. And sometimes the director will fly with us, or a visual effects person will fly with us too.
Right. So how do you as the pilot ensure that you're keeping the camera pointed where it needs to be, keeping the helicopter safe, checking all the stuff that a pilot would normally check, I know oil temperatures, engines, all that kind of stuff, looking out for obstacles. Is there must be more than just a pilot in this crew, if you like, I'm thinking.
Yes, yes, certainly. So all of the shots are very carefully thought about. They're all storyboarded, and normally the director has a very clear idea of exactly what he wants the camera to see.
Mm,
So there's a lot of briefing, there's a lot of talking about how we're going to make the shot work. Um, and essentially, I can see what the camera is seeing because I have a monitor in the front.
right.
And then it's all about the communication that I have with the camera operator in the back, and then listening to instructions from him, looking at my monitor, and making sure that I can get that helicopter where he can best build the shot that he needs to do. Um, the skill in what I do is ensuring that you are aviating first. It's very,
Mm,
very easy to get drawn into the monitor or the pilot's monitor.
mm.
But ultimately you've got to remember that your job primarily is to keep your camera operator safe. Because if you keep him safe, you're going to keep the aircraft safe and yourself safe.
Sure. Okay. You mentioned briefing there, and thinking about modern action movies, uh, I can imagine for a start there is going to be more than one helicopter in the air, possibly a couple of camera helicopters, but then an action aircraft as well, and possibly even drones as well. And there are often things going bang and all sorts of other stuff going on there. It's a big old setup that I'm sure is very expensive, so you're going to want to get it right first time. But also, there's that issue of how do you deconflict the drones and the helicopters and make sure you don't end up with everyone flying in the same direction at the same time.
Yes, well, it's all done with the briefings, pre-flight briefings, and you're absolutely right. Some of the setups we do are very complex. They're hugely expensive. They've taken months in the planning. Sometimes it may only be a one-shot deal. So if it's a big chase scene with explosions, there'll be one attempt to get this shot. There'll be multiple cameras on the ground. There may well be one or two filming helicopters. Certainly, every film I'm working on now will see a drone unit, and it's very often that we will work alongside the drone unit as well. So there's a lot of coordination that goes on the ground first. And generally it works really well because everybody knows exactly what they've got to do. And that's always the thing that amazes me about movies, is just how much attention to detail there is with scripts and storyboards. So generally it always fits together very well.
Right. Pilots tell me very often that one of the keys to aviation safety is being able to say, regardless of the customer or whatever you need to be doing, no, we're not going because it's not safe, because of this aspect of the weather, because of this aspect of whatever else. You've just said that, the sets can be very, very expensive. They're a one-off. What about if that morning, that evening, you're due to shoot and the weather just isn't suitable? How, the wind's from the wrong direction, let's say. What's that conversation like with a director?
Uh, Generally, it's okay, but every now and again, you are presented with a situation which is going to be it's going to be tricky,
Hmm.
and my job then, along with the camera operator, is to explain to the film crew what the problem is, and suggest an alternative. Um, I think you have to be, when you're working on a very high end movie, something like James Bond or Mission Impossible.
Hmm.
You are working with some of the best action filmmakers in the world. They have
Hmm.
enormously talented people, especially in the stunt department, and they are hugely experienced and so capable. You I need to make sure that I'm not out of my depth. So
Right. Hmm.
you think carefully about the shots you're going to deliver. But a good example would be that if we need to maximize the power that the helicopter needs to be able to get it in the right position, but the wind is behind us,
Yeah.
which is a very dangerous place for a helicopter to be with a wind behind, and you're operating at low speed. Um, we have to think that through quite carefully, and we have to flag that up, and we say, on this occasion, that wind is going to be too hard for us to deal with, but we believe that we can do it this way instead. And normally, I would say 99% of the time, that's absolutely fine. It's very rare that we've had showstoppers due to weather. I mean, if the weather's really poor and it's raining very hard, then
Hmm.
no one's going to shoot.
Sure.
So that's fine. That's fine. Um, but one of the skills I have to have is absolutely to know my limitations.
Hmm.
And an example of that would be the opening sequence of Spectre, where you had Chuck Aaron doing the aerobatics in the helicopter, which is a fantastic scene, but it's beyond my skill set. But the film, um, directors and filmmakers, they know who's capable of what, and normally you'll get hired to do a job by people you've worked with before, and they know what you're capable of, and if they need to get a specialist in to do a certain sequence, they will do that.
Yeah, okay. Let's rewind a little bit then to find out how this came about. So you learned to fly helicopters. Then I think you were a corporate pilot for a little bit and did some sort of London sightseeing, all that kind of stuff, building up hours, the things that helicopter pilots do. But there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no school to go and learn how to be a movie helicopter pilot. No one goes off and signs up to that course. So what changed? What stopped you being a sightseeing pilot and made you into a movie pilot?
Well, I was very lucky in as much as I went into work one day, not expecting to fly, and this was out of an aerodrome in North London, and there was a commercial that needed to be shot for Weetabix, and the pilot that was going to fly phoned in sick and said he couldn't fly, but the film crew had arrived. The helicopter was already rigged with the camera system, and they were ready to go, and the weather was great, and they really wanted to get it done. And so the company I was working for said, well, we do have Will, he's here, he's ready to go. And they said, that's great, let's get Will to do this. And that's when I first met Adam Dale, who's a camera operator who's done a huge amount of movie work over the years. And I remember saying to Adam, look, Adam, I haven't got a clue. I've never flown a camera before. He said, well, don't worry. He said, this is fairly straightforward. He said, I will tell you exactly what you need to do, where to fly the helicopter, and it will be absolutely fine. And that's exactly what he did. And we went off and we did the filming in central London. It worked really well, and Adam and I have been really good friends ever since. And through Adam, I've met lots of other experienced people, and that was my big break. It really was as simple as that. It was one morning, completely out of the blue, and it just snowballed from there.
But from that lucky break, though, there is still a learning process into actually then being the person in command of the movie helicopter, isn't there? And I think, did you say
Absolutely.
you kind of flew left seat for many years?
I did. I was very lucky through Adam to meet Mark Wolf, and Mark is a very, very well known film pilot. And I don't suppose there'll be very many people coming along that will have the credits that Mark has got. And Mark was absolutely fantastic, and he let me sit left seat for many films, and I was there just assisting Mark really, and it gave Mark the ability to be able to really fly the helicopter, looking outside, concentrating on the shot, and especially for work at night. And I could sit next to Mark, and I could just monitor the helicopter, monitor the instruments. And should there have been a tricky situation, an abnormal situation needing an immediate response, my job then was to take control of the helicopter, while Mark could then bring his eyes back inside and then continue. But we never had that situation.
Mm.
But what I did get was many years watching Mark do some really spectacular things. And it's not so much about just the flying, it's learning how to talk to the directors,
Right.
how to manage people on a film unit, and how to lead an aerial film unit. So yes, I owe my film career to Mark, definitely. And I still see Mark today. He's a tremendous chap.
Right. You just mentioned there, in the slim chance that something did go awry and you had to take over, I assume part of your brief is the escape routes. If that happens, if the engine fails or if there are birds or whatever, you know where everyone's going to go.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the more interesting jobs that Mark and I did was with one of the mission movies, Rogue Nation, where there is a scene where Ethan Hunt is running through London, and he goes through the office buildings, and he's on a chase, trying to catch up with the baddie. And there's a sequence where he runs across the top of Blackfriars Rail Bridge.
Yeah.
And the director, Chris McQuarrie, wanted a very specific shot of a close up of Tom running across the bridge, and then the camera would zoom out and tilt up, and it would reveal the London skyscraper scene behind. So it was very specific what he wanted. But there was no easy way of doing it. They thought they could do it with a cable cam, but it's 1,000 feet across the River Thames, and trying to rig up a cable cam with that length is very difficult. They then thought maybe they could do it with the drones, but the drones, even I don't know how long Rogue Nation is, maybe 6-7 years ago, are just not quite as good as they are today. And so there wasn't a lot of confidence there. So it was then a case of, well, we can do this with a helicopter. But being able to get a helicopter between Blackfriars Road Bridge and Blackfriars Road Rail Bridge
Yeah.
at 50 feet then needs an enormous amount of logistical planning, because you can't just turn up and do it. You've got to think about the safety aspect of it. So you've got to have a helicopter that can deliver the performance that in an emergency situation that you can either fly away or land safely. We have to think about the environmental considerations. So that's threats to third parties, ensuring that the river Thames is safe. So we have to have river lockdowns while the helicopter's flying. We have to have safety divers in the river in case the helicopter has to ditch. And then, we have to make sure that we're complying with the regulations. So we have to then go to the Civil Aviation Authority and explain to them exactly what we want to do and how we want to do it, and make sure that we have all of the permits and permissions and alleviations from the law to be able to do it. So that shot, which is only a few seconds in the movie, probably took us 4 months of planning. And would have cost an enormous amount of money, because by the time you factor in street closures, river closures, and everything else, these shots become very, very expensive. But if you're lucky enough to get that shot, and Mark was actually flying it, we had a side-mounted camera, and I was sitting there as the safety pilot again. But very much had organised all the permissions to be able to do it. It's a brilliant shot, and we're really proud of it. So it's sometimes it takes months for a few seconds.
Yeah, I have to ask, when a movie comes out that you've filmed or flown in, are you on the phone to your friends and family saying, "Hey, it's out, you need to go and see it. I'm in this bit just here"?
I think my friends and family got bored of me very quickly.
I'm sure they didn't. Okay, so I know there is. Go on.
Having said that, they are very, very generous, and when we do go to see a movie, they will always stay to the end and see the credits. So they're lovely with that regard.
Now, I do know there is a part of all this that perhaps family have got a little bit bored with, and that is, at the beginning, I joked that you might get a call and have to go, but it does kind of happen that way sometimes, doesn't it? The film industry is quite, we need you now, please. And I think Harry Potter has ruined at least one family holiday.
Yeah, definitely. I think I often say to people, there's no in the film industry. And if you want to be in the movie business, then you're on their timetable, not your timetable. And if an opportunity comes along to go and work on a film, you drop everything and go, because you're as proud as I am of my skill set. I'm not the only person who's got the skill set, and if you're not available, they will go to someone else, and it may be that someone else might get the call next time. So it is very competitive. But yes, we've been on holidays, and the phone has rang, and they say, "Can you come to Scotland tomorrow?" And the answer is yes. Then
yes, and then an awkward conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me the thing I learned from Mark is that the answer is always yes. And then when you've said yes, then you've got to figure out how you're going to do it.
Yeah, right. Okay. I wanted to ask you really what your sort of top moment has been, and I don't think it's a movie, is it? I think the thing you have enjoyed most is something on a very grand scale, but not a movie, something a bit sporting.
Yes, without doubt, I think the 2012 London Olympics was probably the most outstanding project I've been lucky enough to work on. It was a month of work, and I worked both on creative and protocol. Creative being Danny Boyle's team, with the opening sequence where we had James Bond and the Queen parachuting into the stadium, which was just a phenomenal project to be involved in, but also flying for the sports as well, where we were flying for NBC, and we'd be up early in the morning and over at the stadium, so it would fit in with American time, and it was really good fun. Yeah, I loved the Olympics. I thought it was a very, very special time.
Yeah, I think there were lots of helicopters in the air for that opening sequence as well, weren't there?
Yes. The opening sequence was remarkable because it was all about the weather. And
Mm.
I don't know if we can all remember that far back, but it was a very wet summer.
Mm.
And the run up to the Olympics, it was terrible. And everybody thought it was going to be a complete washout. And the day the Olympics started, the weather broke, and we had a month of really, really nice weather. But the opening sequence, which required two people to parachute over the stadium, was very dependent upon the wind being in the right direction. And we had rehearsed for a week beforehand, and we had rehearsed every scenario that we thought was sensible with the prevailing wind as it was in the summer.
Mm.
And when it actually came to the opening ceremony, the wind decided to come from the north, which was almost unheard of in the
Mm.
summertime to get a northerly
Yeah.
wind. And it presented its own challenge because the two guys that jumped out of the helicopter had to clear the lip of the stadium and land in the car park. And so it was very nail biting, 30 seconds or so, while the action helicopter got into exactly the right position
Mm.
because it was so low. There wasn't much time for the chutes to open and then for the two parachutists to fly away into the car park. So, and that was live, and possibly the most tense yet most exciting thing I've ever done. It was remarkable that it all happened live. It was absolutely brilliant.
So you've done the Olympics, that's a big tick. You've done Batman, you've done Mission Impossible, more big ticks. Without giving too much away, what's happening now? What's next? Where can we look for you in the credits on the next movie?
Oh gosh, well, the film industry is still very quiet, but and they have finally announced a new James Bond. So
Mm.
I'm ever hopeful that there may be another Bond movie coming sometime soon. Um, whether I will have any involvement in that, who knows? But it's lovely to dream about. And but having said that, when there are no movies to work on, there is plenty of news flying to do. I'm still very much a new active news pilot. And based out of Red Hill, I work with my colleagues, and a news flying is it can be equally as interesting and an exciting thing to do as well. I've been a news pilot for probably 16 years or so,
Right.
and I find it really rewarding flying. We get to fly all over the country, and we've filmed some very interesting stuff over the years.
Okay. Last thing before I let you go, and I think I know the answer already. Favorite helicopter, what would it be?
Oh, without doubt, for film flying, it has to be the single squirrel.
Mm.
Absolutely brilliant airframe. Very easy to fly, but immensely powerful. And absolutely love the single squirrel. Yeah, it's a cracking airframe.
Right. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much, Will. That's it for this latest episode of World of Business Aviation. Um, as ever, let us know what you think. Suggest some guests. We get Will back again another time if you'd like to hear more from him. But for now, thanks so much, Will, and thanks everybody for joining us.